This is WFYI News Now. It's December 3rd, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, a state program that funds tutoring for struggling students is open for applications. Staff changes at the state as Governor Eric Holcomb's 8 years in office come to an end in January. And COVID-19 infections are down after a spike over the summer.
As it has mutated to be more transmissible, has just become less virulent. It's less likely to cause serious illness than it was at the beginning of the pandemic.
Those stories coming up. But first, Decatur Township Principal Susan Strube is Indiana's Elementary Principal of the Year. The Indiana Association of School Principals chose the West Newton Elementary leader for the honor. Strube has spent her 37-year career in Decatur Township as a teacher, director, and principal. Under her leadership, West Newton earned Purple Star School recognition for supporting military families. A state program that funds tutoring for struggling students is open for applications through December 20th. As Indiana Public Broadcasting's Kirsten Adair reports, Indiana Learns provides students in 3rd through 8th grade with up to $1,000 for high-quality tutoring.
Applications are open to students in public, private, and charter schools. Students are eligible if they receive free or reduced lunch or scored below proficiency on the Math or English Language Arts sections of iLearn. Katie Jenner is the Indiana Secretary of Education. She says thousands of Hoosier students are eligible for the program. She also encourages educators to get involved.
We want to keep improving, so let's make sure we keep our educators who are facilitating this and our students and parents and families in mind as we continue to make it better.
The program was launched in 2022 to combat pandemic learning loss. Once a student is enrolled, parents can choose from a list of approved tutors. Tutors include schools, in-person providers, and online tutoring companies. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Kirsten Adair.
Several top officials in Governor Eric Holcomb's administration have left state government in recent weeks. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith reports that's normal, as Holcomb's 8 years in office come to an end in January.
Departures from Holcomb's administration include the heads of the Gaming Commission, Department of Insurance, Office of Energy Development, Department of Local Government Finance, and Acting State Budget Director. The acting budget director was in that role only a few months after the previous budget director left earlier this year. Holcomb says he's not concerned and that such turnover close to a new administration is normal.
I've told everyone, I want to help you find your next job. I will help, and then we will adjust.
Holcomb says he's not going to think about his own future plans until after he's left office. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
And for our final story today, COVID-19 infections are down after a spike over the summer, according to wastewater levels recorded by the Indiana Department of Health. Dr. Tom Harrismalis is an infectious disease physician at IU Health Bloomington. He says measures of COVID-19 in August and September rivaled previous year's spikes. Despite the case increase, Harrismalis says hospitalizations, deaths, and critical illness all stayed relatively low. In January 2021, the U.S. reported approximately 26,000 COVID deaths a week. Last year, it was a tenth of that, about 1,500 deaths a week at most.
And then in this summer, the week that ended in August 3rd, we had a lot of wastewater COVID. The deaths in the entire United States were about 340 a week.
Harrismalis says partial immunity from vaccination and exposure to COVID-19 contribute to the drop in hospitalizations and deaths.
As it has mutated to be more transmissible, has just become less virulent. It's less likely to cause serious illness than it was at the beginning of the pandemic. And so all that together makes it a more manageable situation.
Harrismalis says the most common treatment for COVID-19 is an over-the-counter medication, Paxlovid. He says older adults and people with underlying health conditions who test positive for COVID-19 should see a doctor to check their oxygen saturation levels. He says otherwise, people who test positive for COVID should use the same criteria as they would to gauge the severity of other illnesses. He lists shortness of breath, chest pains, and high fever as instances to seek care. That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share. And follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.